Once, the world began with emptiness. There was no earth, no sky, no gods, only chaos. Then came the Titans, the Olympians, the lords of the seas and the underworld, those who ruled the elements, fell in love, quarreled, and one day disappeared. In this video, you'll learn how the gods overthrew the Titans and built Olympus. Why did Zeus fear his own children? Who betrayed Olympus, and why did he give fire to humans? Why did Aphrodite betray her husband, and why was Ares a burden to everyone? How did the gods weave intrigues, quarrel, and take revenge, and why did they one day fall silent forever? You will hear the complete history of Olympus, from the first myths to the final day when the gods withdrew into shadow. This isn't just a story about gods. It is a story about power, choice, punishment, and freedom. Suggest topics for new videos in the comments and subscribe to the channel. Bedtime stories come out here every day. Get comfortable. We begin.
Chapter 1. In the beginning was chaos. When there was not yet time, nor space, nor form or boundaries, the whole world remained in a state of absolute indeterminacy. No day or night, no stars, not even the breath of wind, only silence, stillness, and unshaped being. The ancient Greeks named this state chaos. It was not evil, nor emptiness in our sense, but the primordial condition from which life could arise. The first to emerge from chaos were the primordial beings, above all, Gaia, the earth. She appeared of herself, without father or mother, and immediately became the foundation of the future world. It was she who became the support upon which mountains, forests, seas, living creatures, and even the gods themselves would later grow. Gaia was not merely the soil underfoot. In myth, she is a thinking, active force, capable of creating anew, of feeling pain, and of seeking justice. Almost at the same time as Gaia, there appeared the abyss, Tartarus. It was a place so deep and fearful that it was rarely mentioned without dread. It lay in the lowest layers of the world, beneath the earth, deeper than all oceans and mountains. Later, it would become a prison for those whom even the gods decided to punish. After Gaia and Tartarus came Eros, not in the form of a boy with a bow, but as a cosmic principle. He was necessary to make the parts of the world join together. Without him, Gaia could not have borne offspring, and even chaos itself would have had no force to develop. In the earliest myths, Eros is more than a feeling. He is what binds, gives direction and aim. From chaos also arose Nyx, the goddess of night, and Erebus, the darkness, as well as Aether and Hemera, day. They were not merely shadows, but had power. Nyx, in particular, would become the mother of many other beings: sleep, death, fate, deception, and wrath. She would dwell in Tartarus, far from Olympus, and even Zeus, later the king of the gods, would regard her will with caution. From the union of Nyx and Erebus were born light, Aether, and day. For the first time, the world began to distinguish light and darkness, above and below. It was the first system, the first hint of order: night and morning, cold and heat, rest and motion. Meanwhile, Gaia, growing in strength, began to create anew. Without a father, by her own will, she bore Uranus, the sky. He stretched over her like a dome, embracing the earth on all sides. This was the first divine union, not a marriage in the human sense, but a natural and inevitable joining. From their union, many beings were born: the 12 Titans, 3 Cyclopses, and the 3 Hecatoncheires. The Titans were mighty and nearly immortal. They became the foundation of the elder generation of gods. Among them were Oceanus, lord of the primordial waters; Thea, mother of light; Mnemosyne, patroness of memory; Rhea, the future mother of Zeus; Tethys, Coeus, Hyperion, and others. Each would play a role in the events to come. But Uranus did not love all his children. He especially feared the 3 Hecatoncheires, giants with 100 hands and 50 heads, and the one-eyed Cyclopses. He considered them dangerous and hideous, and so shut them in Gaia's womb, not allowing them to be born. Gaia suffered. She felt them thrashing within her, in torment, and could not forgive Uranus this cruelty. Seeking help, she turned to her Titan children. All were afraid to raise a hand against their father, except the youngest, Cronus, who was clever, ambitious, and felt no fear of Uranus. Gaia gave him a special sickle of adamant, hard like nothing else in the world. When Uranus came to her again, Cronus lay in wait, sprang from ambush, and castrated his father. Uranus's blood falling upon the earth produced many beings: the avenging Erinyes, the spirits of vengeance, the giants, who would later rise against Olympus, and the Meliani, ash tree nymphs. His severed flesh fell into the sea, whipping the waters into foam, from which Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, would later emerge. After Uranus's overthrow, Cronus became the new ruler. He freed the Titans and began to reign. He took his sister Rhea as his wife, and their union became the foundation of a new order, an age of strength, stability, and primeval power. Yet over him too hung a prophecy. One of his children, as he had once done, would overthrow his father. Fear of this fate drove Cronus to cruelty. Each time Rhea bore a child, he swallowed it. Thus vanished Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Rhea was in despair, unable to watch her children disappear one by one. When it came time to bear a 6th child, she resolved to deceive Cronus. On the island of Crete, in a deep cave, she gave birth to a boy named Zeus. Instead of the infant, she wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and handed it to Cronus. Suspecting nothing, he swallowed it, thinking he had destroyed yet another child. Zeus grew up in hiding under the protection of the Curates, warriors who clashed their weapons to drown out his cries. He was fed by the goat Amalthea, and his caretakers told him of the injustice wrought upon the earth. He knew who he was, and that one day he would return. This chapter of myth ends not with victory, but with expectation. Zeus is still a child, yet the world already trembles with foreboding. The elder Titans live in their confidence. Cronus delights in power, unaware that within him lie not only his swallowed children, but a mistake, a stone, not flesh. Everything is moving towards a new war, a great battle for the fate of the world. For now, the world holds its breath. Olympus is still empty. The gods have not yet taken the summit. Everything is only beginning.
The Titan War and the Triumph of Olympus. Many years passed since Zeus had been hidden on Crete. He grew in secret, but not in idleness. From childhood he was told who his father was and what had become of his brothers and sisters. He knew he was not just the youngest son of a Titan, but the only one who could change fate. When Zeus became a man, he left Crete and secretly returned to the mainland. First, he found Metis, the goddess of counsel and cunning. She helped him make a plan. On her advice, Zeus prepared a special draught and gave it to Cronus as a drink. It worked. Cronus felt sharp pain and began to vomit up what he had swallowed. First the stone, then Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Despite the years they had spent inside him, they had not aged, for they were immortal. Freed, the children united with Zeus. Together they resolved to end the Titans' rule. Thus began the Titanomachy, the great war between the old and the new generations of gods. It was not a brief conflict, but a long, exhausting struggle lasting 10 years. The world stood on the brink of ruin. Mountains collapsed, the sky split, the sea flooded its shores. Everything that existed took part in this war, even if it chose no side. On Zeus's side fought not only the freed Olympians, but ancient allies.
those unjustly imprisoned by Cronus and Uranus, the Cyclops and the Hecatoncheires. Zeus found a way into Tartarus, descended into its darkness and freed them. In gratitude, the Cyclops forged 3 mighty artifacts. For Zeus, lightning bolts, dazzling and irresistible. For Poseidon, a trident able to shatter land and stir earthquakes. For Hades, a helm that made its wearer unseen. These gifts proved decisive. The Hecatoncheires, with their 100 hands, could hurl enormous boulders at the Titans with incredible speed. Their presence changed the course of battle, for the strength of the Titans, though great, was not without limit. Yet the Titans were not defenseless. Their army was led by Cronus himself. Beside him fought other Titans, mighty Atlas, later condemned to hold the sky upon his shoulders, wise Oceanus, reserved Chaos, and fierce Iapetus. Their aim was to keep the power they believed theirs by right of birth. Battles raged everywhere, on earth, in the sky, and in the sea. When Zeus hurled his lightning, whole mountain chains turned to ash. Poseidon tore the ground, flooding plains. Hades, hidden by his helm, slipped into enemy ranks, sowing panic. They answered in kind. The earth quaked beneath their blows, the sky cracked with their shouts. Humans did not yet exist, but had they been there, they would have thought those days the end of the world. For all their might, the Titans lacked unity. Some, like Oceanus, refused to fight. Others wavered as the Olympians' power grew. This gave Zeus and his brothers the advantage. Year by year they pressed the Titans back until at last they won a decisive victory. The defeated Titans were hurled into Tartarus, the very place where their victims had suffered. To prevent any rescue, Zeus stationed the Hecatoncheires as guardians at its gates. Each Titan received a fitting punishment. Atlas, one of the mightiest, was not sent to Tartarus, but condemned to stand at the boundary of earth and sky, bearing the vault of the world on his shoulders. After the war, Zeus and his brothers divided rule. Zeus became lord of the sky and chief among the gods. Poseidon received the seas and oceans. Hades took the underworld where the souls of the dead dwell. The earth remained common to all, and none of the brothers had sole right to it. This division of power became the basis of a new order in which the gods no longer fought directly for the throne, but coexisted in balance. The Titanomachy ended, but its consequences were felt for ages. The old order was destroyed, and in its place arose rule not only of brute force, but a new combination of strength, reason, and law. Zeus, once a hidden child, then a leader, was now a king, but his reign had only begun.
Olympus and the establishment of order. The world did not become peaceful at once after the Titans were cast into Tartarus. The earth still trembled from recent battles. The sky was scarred. The sea heaved as if remembering the blows of Poseidon's trident. Victory was won, but chaos had not vanished. The brothers had not only to divide power, but to establish lasting order in the world that now belonged to them. First, Zeus, as the eldest, proposed they not struggle for sole rule, but divide the world into 3 parts. To avoid disputes, they drew lots. Opinions among the gods differed. Some saw diplomacy, others a trick by Zeus. But, however it was, the lots fell thus. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon the seas, Hades the underworld. The earth remained undivided and common to all. Zeus took his throne atop Mount Olympus, the highest mountain in Greece. Veiled in clouds, the summit was not merely a place, it became a symbol of divine authority. Here, high above the earth, the gods began to build their dwelling, not of stone and wood as mortals do, but woven of ether, a pure, transparent substance inaccessible to mortals. There appeared assembly halls, chambers for each god, and sacred rooms with marble columns and golden thrones. On Olympus, Zeus set rules. He declared that each god's power would be limited to their sphere. No one was to interfere in another's domain without leave, even Zeus himself. He could not command the seas,
That was Poseidon's prerogative. Nor could he order the souls of the dead. There Hades ruled. In all else, his word was law. To preserve order, Zeus established councils. Olympus was no democracy, but there was deliberation. The gods gathered when common decisions were needed, whether to intervene in mortal affairs, how to punish a transgressor, whom to appoint as patron of a city or a hero. Hera, his sister and wife, often opposed him. Athena spoke calmly and prudently. Ares demanded force. Dionysus could suggest a risky, unforeseen path. The final word, however, remained with Zeus. Among the first acts of the new Olympus was the stabilization of the surrounding world. Poseidon calmed storms, set the bounds of the seas, and commanded the waves to obey the lunar cycle. Hades ordered the realm of the dead, creating Elysium for the righteous, Tartarus for the wicked, and the asphodel meadows for those whose lives were neither good nor evil. He appointed judges, Minos, Aeacus, and Rhadamanthus, to decide each soul's fate. Zeus turned his attention to earth and sky. He became patron of order, justice, and law. He set the alternation of day and night, established the path of the sun and phases of the moon, commanded the winds to heed the four directions, named the lightning bolts, and sent them along their heavenly ways. He allied himself with Themis, goddess of justice, to help him judge not only among gods, but among future mortals. Not all were satisfied with the new order. Some titans had escaped imprisonment. Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus, sons of Iapetus, had not fought for Cronus. Prometheus had even helped Zeus. He knew the Titan's time was over, but his relations with Zeus would later sour, especially after he gave fire to humans and changed their fate forever. That story would come later, but even then it was clear establishing order did not end all conflicts. Meanwhile, the first customs of Olympus took shape. The gods gathered at feasts to eat ambrosia and drink nectar, food and drink that grant immortality. The Muses played and sang, and the goddess Hestia kept the sacred fire at the heart of the dwelling. Each god received a place, symbols, animals, plants, and rites. Olympus began to resemble a city, without streets or roofs, without needing walls, for none dared ascend without invitation. Zeus also began to form relations with other deities and with mortal women. Soon he would have children, some destined to take key places among the Olympians. For now Olympus was relatively quiet, a time of laying foundations. All knew order was established, but it rested not on fear, but on balance. The world no longer belonged to chaos, yet it was not yet fully stable. This chapter of Olympus's story is not one of battles and victories, but of building a system. Zeus proved he could not only destroy, but create. Poseidon and Hades accepted their roles. The Titans retreated. The world began to breathe anew. And for the first time in cosmic history, there arose something that could be called governance, with laws, rules, and hierarchy. Olympus became the center of this world. Though unseen from the earth, it became the point of reference from which the gods watched, judged, argued, loved, and punished. It was not perfect, but it was, and from it began an age in which whole peoples believed.
The 12 Olympians. Who are they? When the Titan War ended, Zeus and his brothers secured their power. Olympus became their abode, and the divine council took shape. Yet authority was not limited to Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. The world was too complex to be ruled by three alone.
In this period, other gods came to Olympus, and together with Zeus formed what later would be called the 12 Olympians, a list that shifted over time. Sometimes Hestia was replaced by Dionysus, sometimes Heracles appeared. But in the classical understanding that crystallized in Athens and spread across Greece, the 12 were Hera, Zeus's sister and wife, goddess of marriage and family. Though her power chiefly concerned the household, Hera was far from gentle. She was stubborn, jealous, and driven by a keen sense of justice. Zeus, famous for his many affairs, often met her wrath. Yet Hera was not only his consort, but a full participant in Olympus's decisions. Poseidon, Zeus's brother, lord of the seas. After the war, the Cyclopes gave him the trident with which he mastered the waters of the world. He governed oceans, rivers, storms, and earthquakes. Passionate and proud, he built palaces beneath the sea and sired many children with nymphs and mortal women. The sea itself reflected his nature, changeable, loud, dangerous, yet vital. Hades, another brother, ruler of the underworld. He did not dwell on Olympus, but his place in the pantheon was unassailable. Hades was not evil, he was necessary. His realm was dark, but ordered. He ensured the dead found their place and did not return. He guarded the earth's hidden riches, gold, gems, minerals, and so was called Pluton, the wealthy. Athena, Zeus's daughter, born in an unusual way. Fearing a prophecy that a child of Metis might overthrow him, Zeus swallowed his first wife. But within him, Athena developed, and one day, tormented by a terrible headache, Zeus had Hephaestus split his skull. Out sprang Athena, fully grown and armed. She became goddess of wisdom, strategy, crafts, and just war, patroness of cities, especially Athens, which bears her name. Apollo, son of Zeus and Leto, god of the sun, the arts, prophecy, and harmony. His cult was strong at Delphi, home of the famous oracle. Apollo was the ideal of male beauty, yet beneath the harmony was a strict and vengeful god. He could bring plague when angered, or heal when pleased. He played the kithara, shot the bow, and spoke truths no one could refute. Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, goddess of the hunt, the moon, and chastity. She never married, guarded her freedom, and protected wild creatures. She did not tolerate violations of her boundaries. The hunter Actaeon, who saw her bathing, was changed into a stag and torn apart by his own hounds. Yet she protected women in childbirth and young maidens, especially those who rejected marriage and social expectations. Ares, god of war, son of Zeus and Hera. His father never hid his dislike. Ares personified unbridled fury, blood, and destruction. He was respected but unloved, even on Olympus. Unlike Athena, symbol of strategy and reason, Ares was the embodiment of raw force and instinct, attended by the spirits of terror, fear, and strife. Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. By one tale she was born from the sea foam around Uranus's severed part, by another she was the daughter of Zeus and Dione. Her power reached far beyond lovers. She ruled passion, desire, attraction. Even great gods could not resist her. Married to Hephaestus, she often gave her heart to others, especially Ares. Hephaestus, god of fire and the forge, by one myth Hera bore him without Zeus. Lame and not handsome, his skill was unmatched. He forged the gods' weapons, including Zeus's lightning, Apollo's bow, and Achilles' shield. Despite his appearance, he was respected for labor, ingenuity, and devotion to his craft. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, the first daughter of Cronus and Rhea, elder sister of Zeus. She took no part in quarrels, wars, or romances. Her role was different. She guarded the household fire, domestic warmth, ritual, and sacrifice. In some pantheons, she yielded her place to Dionysus, yet her cult was steady and universal. The first libation at every banquet was offered to her. Hermes, son of Zeus and Maia, god of trade, cunning, travel, and thieves, messenger of the gods.
He wore winged sandals and cap, possessed quick wit, and the ability to move freely between worlds, and escorted souls to the underworld, a link between gods and mortals. Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, madness, and theater, the last to join the Olympians. His mother was the mortal Semele, his father Zeus. His cult was most ambiguous. It combined delight and destruction, intoxication and revelation. His festivals were noisy, sometimes beyond bounds, but through chaos he opened new forms of truth. These 12 are more than a group of gods. They mirror the structure of the world itself, in each a distinct force, a distinct facet of human life, reason and passion, death and birth, love and war, art and labor, family and solitude. And though immortal, their characters are painfully human. They envy, fall in love, quarrel, seek meaning, and take revenge. That is why the Greeks loved their myths. In each god, they saw not only a power, but a reflection of themselves.
The Quiet Summit, How Olympus is Arranged. After the war and the establishment of the new order, Olympus became not just a symbol of power, but a real place where the gods dwelt. Mount Olympus had no gates or walls. Mortals could not go there not because of obstacles, but because they were not admitted. Hidden from sight, it was perceived as perfectly real. The gods did not live in vapor. They had halls, chambers, furnishings, and their own rituals, all not of stone and wood, but of divine substance, bright and intangible to mortals, aether. At the center stood Zeus's throne, the chief sign of authority, not for decoration, but the seat from which he dispensed justice, convened councils, and watched the world. Around it were the places of the other gods. Each had a voice and a sphere of influence. The structure was hierarchical, but not absolute. Though Zeus was supreme, he did not rule without limits. Meddling in another god's domain was a breach of balance. Olympus had no court etiquette or meetings by schedule. The gods gathered when needed to discuss intervention in mortal affairs, resolve conflicts, take oaths, or proclaim Zeus's will. At such councils, the elder, the respected, and the wise spoke. Athena often served as the voice of reason, Hera as guardian of order, Apollo as prophet, Hermes as go-between for gods and men. Each knew his or her place and boundaries. Besides councils, Olympus lived a measured life. There were feasts at which the gods tasted ambrosia and drank nectar, not simply amusement, but a ritual union. Banquets were held with music and songs of the Muses, daughters of Zeus and Momnazine, patrons of the arts. Sometimes disputes and even conflicts arose at these festivities, but they rarely grew into open hostility. Above all, Olympus valued equilibrium. There was also the role of cupbearer, the one who poured drinks at feasts. First Hebe, daughter of Zeus and Hera, later, by one account, Ganymede, a mortal youth whom Zeus abducted and raised to Olympus for his beauty. His presence at banquets is another example of how immortals could admit mortals, if chosen. There were no temples on Olympus. Gods did not need worship from other gods. Each had a hall reflecting their character and function. Athena's, strict, without excess, yet full of knowledge. Aphrodite's, filled with fragrances and calm, where refinement and delight reigned. Ares, an arsenal, where armor was ever ready. Hephaestus, a forge, where artifacts were born that could change the course of events. And yet the most important space on Olympus was not Zeus's throne, nor the banquet hall, but the fire Hestia tended, the symbol of Olympus's essence, stability, warmth, life. This fire never went out. It did not scorch or blaze. It simply was, quiet and even, like the breath of the world. Though Olympus seemed a place of order, tensions lived within it. Hera grew jealous, Ares demanded glory, Athena disputed with Poseidon over cities. Aphrodite wove her amorous intrigues, changing the fates of heroes. At times Hermes mocked, at times Zeus grew angered. Sometimes Artemis withdrew to the forests to rest from bustle. Olympus was no utopia, it was a living organism, with rules and with feelings. Even the gods, though immortal, did not consider themselves fully free. They bowed to ancient laws. There were the Moirai, the Fates, higher even than Zeus. He could not change what they had set down. There was Xenia, sacred hospitality, which none might violate. There were oaths sworn by the gods, the Styx-sworn oath, whose breach was punished irrevocably. Thus, Olympus became not merely a place, but a system. Here decisions were born that would shape the destinies of cities, heroes, whole generations. From here, wars began and alliances were forged. Here, myths were created and passed from age to age. Olympus was far away, yet its breath was felt in every temple, every sacrifice, every story by the fire. It was closed to men, but open in their imagination. Ideals did not live there. Characters did. And so Olympus was not only a mountain's peak, but the peak of human understanding of the divine.
Quarrels and intrigues on Olympus. Olympus was the abode of immortals, but not a place of harmony. The gods, endowed with power and eternity, possessed not only great abilities, but vivid characters, passions, ambitions, and weaknesses. Thus, conflicts occurred there as well, sharp, protracted, tangled. Where authority, honor, and love crossed, quarrels, intrigues, and vengeance inevitably flared. The most frequent clashes involved Zeus and Hera. Hera, goddess of marriage and family, was Zeus's lawful wife. She knew her husband was the supreme god, lord of sky and lightning, but she knew something else as well. Zeus was not faithful. He often took up with other goddesses, nymphs, and mortal women. Some affairs he hid. Others brought loud consequences. Demigod children, meddling in the fates of nations, squabbles on Olympus. Hera suffered the constant humiliation, and her suffering turned to action. She did not so much take revenge on Zeus as on those who, in her eyes, crossed the boundary. So Io, Hera's own priestess, suffered when Zeus seduced her. To save Io from his wife's wrath, Zeus turned her into a cow. But Hera learned the truth and set Argus Paneptes, the 100-eyed watchman, to guard her. When Zeus had Argus slain, Hera took his eyes and set them in the tail of the peacock, her sacred bird. Later she sent a gadfly after Io, and the girl cow wandered the world in torment. A similar fate met Semele, a mortal by whom Zeus expected a child. Hera, disguised as an old woman, persuaded her to demand that Zeus appear in his true form. When he did, Semele perished in his glory. Only the unborn child, the future Dionysus, was saved. Another constant source of strife was rivalry among goddesses. The most famous was the quarrel of Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite. It began when Eris, goddess of discord, was not invited to a feast. In revenge, she threw among the guests a golden apple inscribed, "To the fairest." A quarrel flared between the three. Zeus declined to judge and handed the choice to a mortal, Paris, son of the Trojan king. Each goddess tried to sway him. Hera promised dominion over kingdoms. Athena, wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite, the love of the most beautiful woman on earth. Paris chose Aphrodite. In gratitude, she gave him Helen, wife of the Spartan king. This choice became the cause of the Trojan War. Though it began as a contest of beauty, its consequences proved disastrous for hundreds of men and gods. Intrigues over power arose within Olympus as well. Once, Hera, Poseidon, and Athena plotted against Zeus, deeming his rule too harsh. Together, they bound him in sleep, but Thetis, the sea goddess, secretly summoned Briareus, a hecatoncheir who freed Zeus. In wrath, Zeus hung Hera by the wrists between heaven and earth, tying a golden anvil to her feet, a punishment and a warning. Despite equality in council, supreme authority was his. Aphrodite's intrigues caused problems of their own. Married to Hephaestus, she often betrayed him, especially with Ares. In one tale, Helios, the sun, noticed their trysts and told Hephaestus, who forged an invisible net and set it above the bed. When Ares and Aphrodite met again, they were caught. Hephaestus called the other gods to witness the adultery. The scene provoked laughter, but also revealed inner tension, jealousy, wounded pride, and mockery. Conflicts occurred even among those taken as reason's very image. Athena, goddess of wisdom, often entered disputes. She contended with Poseidon for patronage of a city that would later be Athens. To decide, each was to give the city a symbolic gift. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident, and a spring of salt water burst forth. Athena planted an olive tree. The people chose her gift, the symbol of peace and fruitfulness. From then on, the city was hers. Intrigue did not cease among the younger gods either. Persephone, daughter of Demeter, was seized by Hades. Zeus, by one account, gave silent consent. Learning of her daughter's loss, Demeter withheld the harvest. The earth began to die. Zeus ordered Persephone returned, but she had tasted the food of the underworld and by law could not leave forever. A bargain was struck, part of the year with her mother, part in the underworld. So came the seasons, the result of a divine deal born of quarrel and grief. Even immortals felt shame, pain, and the desire for revenge. Their conflicts arose not from trifles, but from principles, ambition, love, and power. Olympus, despite its height, was a reflection of life, only sharper, brighter, and more enduring. In every quarrel lay a story, in every intrigue, a myth remembered for ages.
Prometheus, humanity, and the gift of fire. Once Olympus's power was secure, the gods faced a question: how to deal with a new kind of beings, mortals. Humans were weak and short-lived, unable to defend themselves or work wonders, yet they were part of creation, and their fate had to be decided. Here, for the first time, a sharp question arose: do the gods have the right to decide everything, and who may contradict them? The one who challenged the order became one of Greek mythology's most controversial heroes, Prometheus. A Titan by birth, he did not fight for Cronus. Through the war, he kept neutral, and at its end, he sided with Zeus. For this, he was allowed to remain free, unlike other Titans sent to Tartarus. He was famous for foresight and intellect. His name means forethinker, but he was also stubborn and prone to independent decisions. According to legend, Prometheus took part in the creation of the first humans. He not only shaped them from clay, but taught them speech, writing, numbers, farming, and navigation. Yet the creatures he made were too vulnerable, unprotected, unskilled, lacking inner strength. Prometheus knew that unless he gave them at least a spark of the divine, they would not survive. He asked Zeus to let him give humans fire, the symbol of civilization, the source of warmth, cooking, metal smelting, defense. Zeus refused. He did not wish mortals to grow too strong. He saw in them a future threat and deliberately kept them in ignorance. Then Prometheus went against Olympus's will. He slipped into the celestial halls, lit a stalk from Helios's fire, and brought it to mankind. Fire changed everything. People began to build, forge, protect themselves, and develop. From that moment, they ceased to be mere living beings. They became the beginning of civilization. But Prometheus's gift was not just help, it was a challenge. Zeus took it as treachery. He understood that fire was more than a tool, it was a symbol. With it, humans began to escape their subordinate state. If they had gained strength, soon they might desire freedom. Zeus's answer was harsh. He decided to punish both humans and Prometheus himself. For humankind, he created a new being, a woman named Pandora, shaped by all the gods. Aphrodite gave beauty, Hermes speech and charm, Athena skill with the hands. But Zeus placed within her a hidden bane. Into her hands they gave a vessel, later called Pandora's box. She was to be a gift for men. When Pandora came, they, enchanted, accepted her. Soon she opened the vessel, and forth flew diseases, suffering, death, jealousy, fear, all that people had not known before. Only hope remained within, the last that didn't escape. Thus Zeus avenged himself on men, granting them power, but with it, suffering. Prometheus bore his own punishment. By Zeus's command, he was chained to a peak of the Caucasus, far from the world, where no one could help him. There an eagle came each day to feed on his liver. Because Prometheus was immortal, his wounds did not heal, but did not kill. The liver grew back, and the torture repeated again and again. It was a symbolic penalty. For every day he had given to humankind, he paid in pain. Centuries passed. Prometheus remained bound, unbroken. He refused to repent. Moreover, he knew a prophecy concerning Zeus. One day a son might be born who could overthrow Zeus if he made a certain mistake. Prometheus kept the secret, holding the hope of release. Only one hero dared free him, Heracles, son of Zeus by the mortal Alcmene. In the course of his labors, he reached the Caucasus, slew the eagle, and broke the chains. Even then Prometheus did not gain full freedom at once. Zeus required that he wear on his finger a ring forged from a fragment of the chain, as a sign that he was not entirely freed, but pardoned. The story of Prometheus is one of the few in which a god defies the gods. He became a symbol of resistance, of championing humankind, of self-sacrifice. His act lies at the root of the idea that good is not always obedience, and justice does not always follow the law. From that moment, relations between gods and people grew more complex. Olympus was no longer merely a seat of power. It became observer, judge, sometimes enemy. And people, once they had received fire, could never return to docility. Prometheus faded from the myths, remaining a figure apart, not Titan, not Olympian, not man, but between. One who gave the immortals a share of their own strength and became an eternal example for mortals.
The end of the Golden Age and the withdrawal of the gods. In the beginning, as the world was forming, gods and humans were closer. They lived in one rhythm, breathed the same air, spoke directly. People brought gifts. Gods answered with signs, miracles, interventions. This time would later be called the Golden Age, before wars, before lies, before fear. But nothing, not even harmony, lasts forever. This world, too, began to change, not in a single day, nor from a single event, but as a gradual, almost imperceptible distancing. And once it happened, the former closeness could not be restored. First, the gods upset the balance. Seeking to preserve order, Zeus resorted ever more often to harshness. His interventions became not requests, but commands. He punished cities and whole peoples for blasphemy, for pride, for breaking oaths. People began to fear not only his power, but his changeability. After Prometheus and Pandora, humans viewed the gods differently.
Fire gave them independence, but also broke the old bond. They no longer asked for favor. They began to ask for protection. Prayers for mercy appeared. Relations grew tense. Zeus saw that mortals were developing. He understood they were no longer the mute creatures one could simply direct. They began to argue, to build, to discover, to forget. Then he decreed that the world must pass through ages, each less perfect than the one before. First, the Golden Age, when people lived without toil or sickness under the gods' protection. Then the Silver Age, shorter lives, more quarrels, neglect of sacrifice. Then the Bronze, war and strife, weapons becoming part of life. And finally, the Iron Age, our age, in which malice and lies became commonplace. In the Iron Age, the gods began to withdraw. Olympus no longer sent clear signs. The gods' voices sounded only in temples, through oracles, in dreams. They watched and intervened, but from afar. Their figures became symbols, their faces, myths. They no longer sat at one table with humans as before. Some gods left Olympus altogether. Hestia yielded her place to Dionysus, choosing seclusion. Hephaestus stayed more often in his forge. Even Apollo, god of prophecy, gave answers ever more enigmatic. Athena spoke through signs, but no longer appeared to warriors as before. Zeus intervened more rarely in human affairs. He grew more like a principle than a person. His anger became abstract, no longer lightning, but fate. His decisions were no longer debated. They became part of the natural order. The gods began passing their functions to heroes. Now men born of mortal mothers and immortal fathers undertook great deeds. Heracles, Perseus, Theseus, Achilles. They became the link between Olympus and humanity. Through them, the gods still acted, but indirectly. The reasons for the withdrawal lay not only with men. The gods tired. Their immortality was not eternal rest, but eternal responsibility. They watched generations change, oaths be forgotten, rights be perverted. With each crime against order, they more often asked themselves whether they should still intervene. The great Trojan War proved the last straw. All the Olympians, in one way or another, took part. Athena, Ares, Aphrodite, Apollo. They fought for cities, chose heroes, guided arrows. But the war was brutal, showing that even with divine favor, humans rush toward destruction. After that, Olympus fell silent. Oracles spoke less often. Wonders happened not at every turn, but once in a generation. Myths became tales. The gods still existed, but their footsteps were no longer heard. Their lightning no longer flared above the fields. Their faces no longer appeared in altar smoke. Thus ended the Golden Age, and began the era the Greeks called the present, full of injustice, pain, doubt, but also of choice. The gods stepped back, not because they vanished, but because they gave the world independence. Yet they did not leave altogether. Olympus remained, the mountain still hidden in clouds. And anyone who lifts his eyes, remembering thunder, wind, or the hush before a storm, feels that someone is still up there, only no longer speaking directly. Once, Olympus was not just a mountain. It was the heart of the world. Power flowed from it. Destinies were decided upon it. Justice was done there. Times changed, and with each century the gods' footsteps grew quieter. Now, no one hears Aphrodite weaving patterns from feelings. No one sees Hermes flying over the earth with a message for which no one waits. Even Zeus's lightning rumbles no longer as omens, but simply as weather. People no longer bring offerings at altars, no longer seek answers at Delphi, no longer swear by Athena's name. But that does not mean the gods have disappeared. Gods do not die. They have gone inward, into memory, into stories and images, into every tale passed from father to son, from grandmother to granddaughter, into every book and painting and play, into every attempt to explain the world through character, love, fear, and courage. They have become symbols and now live in us. Zeus in our sense of justice, Athena in the courage to make a hard decision, Poseidon in the sea's anger when you stand on the shore and know nature's power does not forgive, Hades in every farewell we do not choose, Artemis in the choice of solitude, Apollo in the striving for harmony, Hera in guarding what is dear, Prometheus in everyone who breaks a rule for the sake of good. We no longer hear their voices, but we live with their stories, and while they sound, Olympus is not empty. Perhaps the gods are simply tired, or perhaps they still watch, not as rulers, but as those who want us to become ourselves, to understand that wisdom lies not only in obedience, but in seeking, that myth is not fabrication, but a mirror. And when evening falls, when the last light slips from the horizon and the sky darkens, we, as thousands of years ago, lift our eyes upward, not for an answer, but simply to remember they were and perhaps still are. Now rest. Let the gods not trouble you. They have already told everything.